Welcome to today's webinar titled Stress Management for Teens. We are thrilled to have Tom Sherman with us today. Tom Sherman currently works with the Military One Source program, where he has served as a clinical supervisor for three and a half years. He has also worked with children and adults with mental health and substance use disorders. He also teaches master-level counseling courses in diversity, ethics, assessment, and practicum internships. Without further delay, I will turn things over to today's presenter, Tom Sherman.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're listening to this from. Before we get started, I just needed to cover a quick disclaimer. So bear with me for a second while we review this. The appearance of hyperlinks does not constitute endorsement by the Department of Defense of this website or the information, products, or services contained therein. For other than authorized activities such as military exchanges and morale, welfare, and recreation sites, the Department of Defense does not exercise any editorial control over the information you may find at these locations. Such links are provided consistent with the stated purpose of this Department of Defense sponsored webinar. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? As I can't see you all, I'm going to try to walk the line between addressing teens that may be on the line with us and addressing parents and people who work with teens. So we're going to cover the definition, what is stress, signs of stress, sources of stress, tips to relieve stress, managing your stress, life balance, and at the end, as Stan noted, we'll have some time for questions. So what is our stress? Being young does not prevent you from experiencing stress. And we have to remember, as teenagers or when working with teenagers, new experiences cause stress. Teenagers don't have the same breadth of experience that adults have. And so something that seems routine to adults may feel more acute to teens because they don't have the experience to know that everything will be okay. You know, one of the examples I always like to give is that first breakup. When you've never been in a relationship, you don't know what's going to be on the other side of it, it can seem like the world's imploding. Versus, as an adult, we look retrospectively over the relationships we've had in our lives and realize, it's okay. Relationships end, new ones enter our lives, and we keep moving. But just keep in your mind the acuity of these events for teens. They're new to them. They don't know how to process them as they're entering into this developmental stage of their life. So what is stress? It's a positive or negative response of an individual to change, threats, or challenging demands. The thing to remember is we often think of stress as just being around negative events. Even positive transitions cause changes which can cause stress reactions. And sometimes the stress can also spur on positive change if we're able to channel and utilize it effectively. So we need to remember that stress, when we look at stress or our life and everything is going well, that doesn't mean the stress may not be there. We just may be in a better space to handle it, but we can still experience the effects of stress. So signs of stress. The first one is physical. Oftentimes it's an overlooked aspect of stress is the translation of stress into the expression of body discomfort, an increased indication of headaches, muscle tightness or tension, shortness of breath, tightness in the chest, fatigue, not having the energy that we once had or the teen once had, changes in appetite, eating more, eating less, changes in sleep pattern, just like appetite, sleeping more, sleeping less, and upset stomach. These physical symptoms are often the subtle cues that teens are experiencing stress, even they're not expressing it to us, or even if, for the teenagers online, you're not aware of it directly. So it's important to pay attention to our body. What is our body telling us? Especially when we notice changes in our body that co-occur with other changes in our life. Another sign of stress is mental. Trouble thinking clearly, poor concentration, confusion, negative self-talk, which means telling ourselves we're a failure, catastrophizing what's going on, feeling like we can't ever do anything right, forgetfulness and poor judgment. I often use the metaphor of our emotions being like water in a glass. That glass has a maximum capacity, and as we add more and more stress to that glass, eventually it's going to spill over. And this is where some of these mental signs of stress can come in, is we don't have the emotional capacity to focus anymore without pouring off some of the stress we've accumulated. And as I just noted, there's emotional components of stress too, which go along with those mental ones. Because obviously, if we're not in a good emotional space, we're also going to have a difficult time thinking clearly. So some of the things that teenagers experiencing stress may feel are feeling out of control, increase in nervousness or anxiety, sadness or hopelessness, feelings of worthlessness, increased anger, and thoughts of death or suicide. As noted earlier, teens not having the experience to know that things will get better are what contributes to these feelings of hopelessness. They don't see what the next step beyond this stressful event is. They lack a future focus of, I'll get through this and there will be something next. That can lead to the frustration, which is the anger of, I'm stuck, this is it, what am I going to do with myself? Or, I failed this, I'm always going to be a failure, which is that feeling of worthlessness. And all these feelings can channel into thoughts of death or suicide, the not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And so we want to listen for those type of words of things seem hopeless. I don't feel like I can do anything right. These are going to be keys to us to ask some more questions and maybe ask, directly, have you had any thoughts of suicide? Have you had any thoughts of harming yourself? Which will either indicate to ourselves if we're a teenager that maybe we want to seek some help, or if we're a parent or service provider, this is where we need to focus our attention. The last signs of stress that we're going to cover are behavioral. So we noted under the emotional, increased feelings of anger. This can manifest in aggression. The use of alcohol or drugs as an unhealthy coping mechanism. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how the healthy coping mechanisms, but the use of alcohol and drugs may be an unhealthy way. Not knowing what to do with these emotions, the teen may self-medicate through drinking or drugs. The inability to complete or start projects, this again deals with the short-sightedness. What's the point of doing this? Why do I want to complete this? And it also ties in with the worthlessness. Why go through when I'm just going to fail? And the last one there is compulsive behaviors. When teens are stressed, they may do things they wouldn't normally do. It's linked to the poor judgment and the hopelessness. There's nothing beyond this. Why does what I do matter? So if I want to do something impulsive and reckless, that's okay because it doesn't matter. And obviously, the behavioral signs are really what are going to be noticed. It often gets the teen in trouble, either with their parents or at school, and maybe even with their peers. They may change their peer group due to withdrawing, being aggressive, or start to use alcohol and drugs, where the healthy peers may discourage them, and hearing the discouragement from drinking or using drugs, the stressed teen may withdraw further into a group that is using alcohol and drugs. So what causes stress in teens? Shocker here, homework in school, grades, issues with teachers. A place to look is as a child either transitions into a new school or begins a new school year. The established social pattern, or teacher they may have had a good relationship with, knew how to communicate with, is now gone, and they're having to learn how to address a new teacher who they may not get along with. The increased focus on grades as the child gets older and perhaps thinks about college, thinks about steps beyond high school, and I think just the increased responsibility of homework as they progress through their schooling. Parents and family can become an additional source of stress, especially as teens begin to try to figure out who they are. As they try to develop their own sense of identity, this may increase conflict in the household with parents where there may have been previously a good relationship. There may be conflict around rules. As a teen gets older, they may think that they should have more independence and disagree with rules that the parents had put into place before. And then even something as simple as allowance of, as I gain more freedom, as I can drive my car, as I can go out with my friends independently, can I have some more money to do that? Becomes a stressful salary negotiation for the teen. Social life, teenagers begin to date, so dating breakups can be sources of stress. Changing friend groups as we enter high school, certain people will go into sports, certain people will go into journalism activities, but the core group the teen may have been with before, as those teenagers work on their identity, may go into their own different social groups, and the teen will be left to figure out where their new social standing is, where their new placement is. And just as I mentioned with a new school, there's a transition there. There's going to be new students, new peers that the teen is going to have to figure out, who do I want to be my friends? Fear of failure is a source of stress. Again, as the teen starts to look forward to steps beyond high school, working life, and also just increased pressure of that identification of, who am I? Am I going to be a successful, productive individual? Or do I view myself as not having anything to contribute, or everything I do is going to be a failure? Time. If a teen's busy, this can cause stress. If there's after-school activities, engagement with peers, homework, school, commitments with parents. As a teen takes on more responsibility, they need to be more aware of time, and this awareness may cause stress because they realize they don't have as much time as they once had. Sports, I know that under the social life, as they begin to engage in extracurriculars, there may be more pressure to perform, especially in team sports where the teen feels like the team is relying on them. And then one of the things that isn't on this list that we know is important to this population is deployment of parents, PCSing. All of these are going to affect the teen stress level because the stability that was there is going to change. They may have to engage with a parent when they had a closer relationship with a parent who's now deployed. Or the whole family may PCS to a new area, and the teen has to rebuild that social support system, get reintegrated into a school. So as parents and providers, and if we have any teens on the line, those are probably acute times when to pay attention to your body and look for all those symptoms we just covered on the previous slides. So some more general signs that the teen may be stressed. They eat standing up. They forget what day it is. This comes from a lack of mindfulness, not paying attention to what's going on, feeling exceedingly busy. I'm so busy, I just lose track of what I'm doing. Because they haven't learned some of the skills that parents or other adults may have of here's how you structure your day, here's how you plan for what's coming up. And also might go to that short-sightedness we talked about before of it doesn't really matter what day it is, I'm just kind of going through the motions and not paying attention to what's going on around me. Friends may greet them as, hey, stranger. This goes to the withdrawing we mentioned, is if we're not seeing our friends, if our friends aren't seeing us, it may be because we've withdrawn into ourselves, or the teens withdrawn into themselves, and not engaging as they once did. And so they don't have that social support that they may have had previously, which is going to further exacerbate stress. Always feeling tired, fatigued. Again, this can go from not sleeping enough, it can go to poor eating habits, it can go to laying in bed and ruminating, thinking over and over the day's events or the next day's events, and not being able to get rest. Attempting to do three things at once, not finishing any of them. We talked about that previously with the maybe not seeing the point of projects or feeling that they're going to be unsuccessful, can't win, don't try. Snapping to others, can't sleep or eat. Nothing seems fun anymore. This is a challenging one for a provider or a parent looking at, because again, teens are going through transition periods, and they're going to lose interest in things they used to have interest in. They're going to gain new interest based on their peer group. We're really looking at nothing seems fun anymore, a lack of interest in anything. The teen may always be alone or never alone. Sometimes, when the teen's stressed, they may throw themselves into so many activities so they don't have time to ruminate and to think about what's stressing them, which serves as a temporary distraction, but they're not resolving the underlying issue, the underlying stress there that would serve them in developing longer-term coping skills. Crying at a drop of the hat, this goes back to the emotional capacity. Not having the emotional capacity to deal with regular life events and everything seeming like a major stressful event. People continue asking, are you okay? And the teen wondering themselves, am I okay? Is this behavior normal? So how can we relieve stress? Allow plenty of time. When I think about this bullet point, I think about it in two different ways. On the one hand, it goes back to the planning for events that we talked about in the previous slide of, if you know something's coming up, don't do it the day it's due, because doing the day it's due or the night before is going to increase that stress, it's going to disrupt sleep, it's just going to further increase stress. But also when I think about allow plenty of time, the message is there's no quick fix to relieving stress, especially if it's been a sudden onset, there's been a sudden change. And that's okay. The key is to engage in resources that will, one, develop coping skills long-term, and find a support network that will help you get through, or the teen get through, the stressful time. Exercise and breathing deeply are known to help stress. It can help on that mindfulness, focusing on the immediate. It can help clear the head and stop the rumination of what's behind us, what's in front of us, and really focus on what am I doing right now. Get plenty of rest and eat well. It's hard to have a good level of emotional capacity when we're hungry or when we're tired or cranky. I'm sure as everyone on the line knows, as we've been there. Discuss problems with a family member, friend, or trusted person. Again, going back to the metaphor of the glass, the emotionally full glass, having a social network to pour some of this stress off to. By sharing, we reduce our level of stress and improve our capacity to deal with other stressful events. So it's good to have people we know or the teen knows they can go to when they're feeling stressed. When stress hits big time, take a time out. Taking time to step away when we're feeling stressed or when the teen's feeling stressed can reduce that impulsive behavior. It gives time to reflect and to utilize the resources we talked about in the previous bullet. Changing negative thoughts. We want to avoid and help the teen avoid always never thinking. I always fail. My parents never let me do this. We want to help them find exceptions. I didn't let you go out this time because you didn't complete your homework. But remember last weekend when you did your homework, you were able to go out with your friends. And so going forward, if you do your homework next weekend and do your tours, we can look at going out with your friends this coming weekend. So it's not that this always occurs or that we never allow you to do this. It's situational and helping the teen recognize that. Also with the projects taking on too much, we want to help the teen avoid shouldn't or must thoughts. If the teen is telling themselves, this must be done, and it doesn't really, it's going to add stress because it's going to lead to that sense of failure. I didn't meet this deadline. Someone relying on me is not going to get what they need. We missed the deadline. Here, what are steps we can do to complete the assignment, to get in touch with the person and figure out what our next steps are. But helping the teen realize it's okay, they don't have to do everything. And again, like I said, the words to listen for are those musts and those shoulds. I must do this. I should have done that. And helping find those exceptions. So some more managing stress. Laughter is always a great cure. Finding, does the teen have a movie that they find particularly hilarious? Is there some stand-up YouTube video? What can they do to, again, just take a break the pattern of stress to take a minute and regather themselves and break the negative or stressful thoughts they're in? Be a kid for a couple of minutes. Again, for teenagers, especially on the younger end of the scale, are navigating that transition between being a child and being a teen. And sometimes, again, I'm going to use the should word, they feel like they should act a certain way, they should be grown up, and they don't engage in those fun things or silly things they used to do when they were younger. And it's important for us to create a safe environment where they can do those things and encourage those type of things. Listen to music, just like the exercise, just like find something to make you laugh. It's something to distract you, put you in a different frame of mind. Listen to positive music that energizes you, improves your mood. Having a bath. Another slow down technique of just being present, sitting in the water, feeling the water, and just being, which can sometimes be difficult for teens, but if they're in a good space and they know this is one of the things that helps them, it can be a good recommendation. We mentioned exercise. Exercise moves bad chemicals out of the body. It also increases our good chemicals, increases our dopamine, our feel-good chemicals, and can help reduce stress. Stretching our muscles helps reduce that muscle tension. When we're stressed, we may hold on to stress. Biceps, thighs, jaw. Exercising can reduce some of that. Noticing a common theme here. It takes your mind off the problems. It helps you or the team get in the here and now, just focusing on what's immediately in front of them. And then exercise can help with sleep. It's easier to sleep when we worn ourselves out. Getting plenty of rest, eating well. Breakfast is important, especially if we're thinking about a school setting. We don't want to send the teen, or we don't want to go to school with our stomach rumbling. It's going to increase our anger. We're going to be quicker to respond aggressively. It's going to make it difficult to focus. Same idea with not skipping meals. Now, we know we're probably not going to cut out the junk food entirely, but we do want to eat nutritious food. And for two reasons. One, nutritious food because it helps us with our energy, helps us with our mood. But if we're dealing with issues of self-worth, self-esteem, eating unhealthy may increase a teen's weight, which may further exacerbate self-perception and how the teen thinks others are perceiving them, which is going to increase stress. We want to get at least 8 hours of sleep at night, and we want to stay on the schedule. Routine can help. Knowing what's coming next helps reduce stress. I know after football practice, I have a tutoring group. And also, keeping a schedule, the teen can make plans for fun things down the road. It gives them something to look forward to. Trying to break that short-sightedness that the teen may have of not being able to see beyond the stress. If we have something fun planned, if I get through class this week, I know Mom and I are going to take a trip to the mall to try on clothes. I know me and my girlfriend can go to the movies. So we don't want to just fill our calendar and schedule with things we have to do or we should be doing, but also things that we're going to reward ourselves with, things that we're looking forward to. And the last one under managing stress is utilizing social support. This can't be understated, especially for teens who once confided in parents, may be finding more social support among their peers or other outside individuals. We want to encourage a relationship with the parents, but we also want to recognize and honor those other social support systems. We don't want the teen to feel alone with their problem. We want them to recognize their experience as universal. People feel stressed. It's something that we all experience, just like our first slide said. It's what we do with it that's important. Asking for help can help with the figuring out ways of what to do with this stress. Talking with family members and friends. Finding individuals who have coped with stress healthily. Or even just the process of talking about it, just getting it out so it's not sitting on our chest anymore. And then talking with a counselor. Sometimes having a neutral third party can be useful. I don't feel like my friends are understanding me because they keep on giving me advice. My parents don't get it. The counselor can be that person who doesn't have any other knowledge about the teen, who the teen can look to as being unbiased. So the last thing here is it's important to keep a life balance. Set priorities. This helps with the starting 3 things and not finishing them. What's the most important thing to get done? What's the second important thing? What's third or optional? What would I like to do, but if I don't get to it, it's okay. In setting up those priorities that I'd like to do it, but if I don't get to it, it's okay, it helps with those should and must of, I had this thing I wanted to do, it didn't happen, everything's still okay. This is do not be an overachiever. And I'm sure every parent on the phone is kind of groaning at seeing that. The difference between being an overachiever and doing well is the person who's doing well is managing stress well. The overachiever is basically burning the candle at both ends. Going, looking good, but it's unsustainable. At some point, those wicks are going to meet in the middle and the candle's going to go out. So we want to encourage the teens to do well, to engage in things that are important to them, but help them recognize we don't have time for everything. Going back to the previous bullet of setting priorities. We want to set realistic goals. We want to help the teens set goals that are achievable, because small gains build on each other. If I can do this a homework assignment, I can do the next one. If I can do the next one, I'm going to be set up for the test. As a stage 2, teens may look at very big goals. I want to go to college. I want to go to Yale. I want to go to Fiji in the Peace Corps. They're all good goals. But if, the teen comes to you and just says, I want to go to Fiji and be the Peace Corps, likelihood the teen doesn't even know where to start. And so they won't know where to direct the energy. And they may eventually drop it. And dropping that goal is going to lead to those feelings of worthlessness, feelings of being unable to succeed. One of the ways that we can help as parents, counselors, friends, is helping the person break it into smaller goals. What's step 1? Have you researched, what it takes to get into the Peace Corps? Have you taken the classes you need to get there? If you haven't taken the classes, have you set an appointment with the counselor, the guidance counselor? So looking at those small goals that are achievable. Okay, I did this, so now I know what my next step is, my next step. Eventually building towards that larger goal. But those feelings of small successes, or any success, is tantamount to continuing towards a goal. Acknowledging feelings. Helping the teen, or if you have a teen on the phone, recognize that it's okay to have negative feelings. Because if we don't acknowledge they're there, we can't begin to address them. If we say everything's okay, when they're not, we're denying ourselves the opportunity to deal with those emotions, and we're not allowing our social support network to help us with dealing with those feelings. As parents, providers, let them know, it's okay to feel stress. Again, everyone does it. It's what we do with it next. And the last 2 here, take care of yourself and schedule time for you. Both of these make all the preceding points much, much easier. We have time carved out just for ourselves to relax, to reflect, where we're not feeling the pressure to go, to achieve, to meet this deadline, to hang out with these friends. We can take a step back and look at, setting priorities, setting goals. And then, the taking care of yourself goes the same, is when we feel better, we have more emotional capacity to deal with the stress that life presents to us. All right, so that's it for my presentation. Are there any questions from the group?
Tom, we do have some questions that have come in. The first question reads, can I prepare for stress before it occurs?
Yes, this is actually one of the things I recommend teens do, and parents try to help with the teens. It's much harder to figure out a solution when we're in the moment. The example I like to use is, it's much easier to put on snow tires before it snows than trying to get yourself out of a snowdrift. So it's good to keep a list of how you know you're feeling stressed, like we just talked about, of knowing yourself, knowing when you're starting to feel stressed. Identifying things that you can do to reduce it. I encourage teens to write these things down. When you're feeling stressed, what do you like to do? What do you know is effective in reducing your stress? And then just a list of, when I'm feeling stressed, who can I reach out to? With a couple names, a couple phone numbers, and ways to engage that social support system. So if the teen does this ahead of time, they have it handy, and when they're feeling stressed, they're not starting from scratch. They have something to refer to help them get through the stressful situation.
Okay, great. What if my teen doesn't want to talk with me but feels more comfortable talking with a counselor? Are there any available through Military OneSource?
Yes, Military OneSource is available 24/7 to assist you in finding a referral for your teenager.
Okay. Next question reads, I'm a parent of a stressed teen. What can I do?
If you're lucky, the teen is talking to you. And, what we want to do is we want to acknowledge the teen's feelings. And just say, I hear you're feeling stressed. And if we know what the source of it is, I know it's difficult having just moved, or I know, starting a new school year is difficult. And helping the teen feel validated. You want to be supportive, listen to what their concerns are. So if we don't know what the stress is, asking them, what's going on. We don't want to offer solutions too quickly, but we do want to say, how can I help you? We want to show care, warmth, and love. And with the love, it's important for parents to remember that we often get busy and think that, my child knows I love them. Of course they do. But asking the child, how do you feel loved? Or what makes you feel loved? So the teen can say, this is what they need from us to feel loved by the parent.
Great. Thanks, Tom. There are no more questions at this time. I would like to thank you for sharing your valuable experience and your expertise. I would also like to thank our attendees for participating into today's webinar and asking some great questions. If you find yourself having any questions after the webinar is over, please email moswebinars@militaryonesource.com, and I'll get these questions over to Tom, and we'll get an answer back to you as soon as we can. This concludes today's webinar on stress management for teens. Thank you all for attending, and have a great day.